So today we are going to discuss about natural law thinking as you find in the Greek philosophy. Okay. Now I can start this whole thing with a short story. Okay, I'm not good at storytelling, but nonetheless, it's a very important story. Okay, it's by the name Antigone, Sophocles' Antigone. Okay, now, what happens in this, tragic, play is that there are two brothers, uh, Eteocles and Polynices. Okay, so these are the two brothers. Okay, they are the sons of someone by the name Oedipus. You know Oedipus. You guys definitely know about Oedipus. So, so what happens is that when Oedipus dies, he says that so he has two sons and both will lay claim to the throne. So he says that okay, both brothers will rule for 1 year every every alternate year. Okay, so the fight starts when Ethiopia rules for 1 year and does not give the throne to Polynices. So the fight is for the city of Thebes. Okay, so Ethiopia defends Thebes and Polynices. I think the city, another city by the name Argos or something. Okay, he basically goes with the enemies of Thebes and attacks Ethiopia. So war breaks out between these two brothers, Ethiopia and Polynices, and the outcome is that both the brothers die. Okay, both the brothers die in the battle. So once they die, they are succeeded by their uncle by the name Creon. Okay. Now, what Creon does is that because Antiochus was defending Thebes, and whereas Polynices was attacking, so and also he had some particular personal knowledge about certain things that happened earlier. So he had a liking for Antiochus as well, and because of that, he instructed that because Polynices was attacking Thebes using a foreign army, so he should not be given proper burial. So whereas Eteocles is given proper burial, Polynices is not given proper burial. Okay. Now giving proper burial to those who die is considered as a God-given. I mean, one of the higher laws. Okay, it's one of the most important, higher laws. Okay, higher laws in the sense that it is considered as law superior to law made by man. Okay, so what happens after this decree is issued by Creon that Polynices be not buried. So these two brothers also have sisters. By one of the sisters' name is Antigone, and the name of the play is based on her name. And there is another sister by the name Ismene. Okay. Now Antigone, thinks that the order given by Creon that Polynices be not given proper burial, and that he be left in that battlefield to be eaten by vultures and rats and all that. Okay, he thinks that this is not. No, she thinks that this is not acceptable. Okay, so Antigone thinks that this is not acceptable. So she shares with her sister Ismene that I think what Creon, the Creon's order of not giving proper burial to Polynices is not acceptable. Okay, it's against the higher laws. Okay, God-given laws, if you may. She tells her, her plan of burying Polynices. Okay, so, to that Ismene says that okay, she will not do that. She will not break the law given by Creon. Okay, but Antigone doesn't like it. There's something inside her that tells her that this is not okay. So she goes anyway and buries the body of Polynices. Okay. Now, so this comes to the knowledge of okay. So someone finds it and brings it to the knowledge of the king Creon. Okay. Now, Creon had said that anyone who tries to bury or buries Polynices will be sentenced to death. Okay. Now the problem arises. Okay, that Antigone has buried, and so Antigone has to, him being the ruler, has to punish. Okay, so he says he punishes Antigone. And the order is basically that she will be entombed, buried alive. Okay. Now the thing is that Creon also has a son by the name Himon. Okay. Now Himon had earlier proposed Antigone. Okay. And so Himon is basically Antigone's fiance. Okay. Now, meanwhile, what happens is that when Antigone, you know, is punished, okay, so she is basically asked by Creon that, okay, why have you done so? So to that, Antigone says that, okay, there is a higher law given by the gods, okay, and that says that everyone should be given proper, burial. So your law, okay, that is a man-made law that says that Polynices should not be given proper burial, goes against that higher law. So even when Creon asks her to go back on what she did, what she has done, say that she is wrong, she doesn't accept it. She is very adamant and insistent that what she has done is right. Okay, that's the right thing to do. That's the just thing to do because it is in accordance with certain higher law. Now she is punished anyway, as I just told you. She was to be entombed. Okay. Now, before she could be even punished, she goes to a cave and then she hangs herself. Okay. So meanwhile, there is a priest. Okay, there is a priest that comes and I think his name is Tiresias. Okay, Tiresias, who's basically a prophet, sort of, a blind prophet. Okay, he warns Creon that that gods are not happy with this, dictate which has been issued by him. This, what Creon is basically doing by punishing Antigone and leaving the body of Polynices outside. But he doesn't listen. He's also equally adamant. He's like, no, she has to follow the law, and everyone has to follow the law. Now, then the prophet warns him that if you do not follow God's law, then there will be certain consequences, and that will be very tragic, for you personally. But he doesn't listen. Okay, he still is like headstrong. So as I told you, meanwhile, Antigone goes to the cave and she hangs herself. Okay, Hemon, who's the fiancé of Antigone and son of Creon, also goes to the cave. Okay, and he dies there. Okay, he dies there. He commits suicide. So the moment Hemon dies, Creon also goes there and finds his son dying right before his eyes. And then when Hemon's death comes to the knowledge of Creon's wife, okay, she also dies. Okay, so this is essentially a very tragic story. Okay, that because of unjust law which is imposed because of the adamancy of Creon, so many tragedy happens. Okay, so this is the brief story. You guys can always go back and the dramatized version is available on Google. If you want, you can go and watch in greater detail. But the essence of this story is that here Antigone, okay, who is the protagonist of this whole story, is that she says that she basically refuses to follow a diktat given by Creon. Okay, what is that? That Polynices be left on the battlefield. Okay, to be eaten by vultures and all that. Okay, and they had a higher law that said that no one should be given that treatment. That anyone who dies have to be given proper burial. So that's considered as higher law. Whereas Creon's order that Polynices be not allowed to be buried is a man-made law. So Antigone essentially says that I'm not bound by the law given by you. You are mere basically Creon, okay, because you are a mere mortal, okay, and there is a higher law given by Jews, and that is of more importance. So what the essence of this story is, that there is a higher law that supersedes all other man-made inferior law. Okay, so Antigone thinks that she is bound by the higher law. Okay, so the law, human-made law, which is unjust, not in accordance with that higher law, is something that she has obligation to not follow. So that's the justification for civil disobedience as given by Antigone. Okay, so now I think someone has received that as a project topic. So you can always go back to this story and then proceed on to other justifications for civil disobedience. So in the play, Antigone replies to Creon when Creon exclaims that, and still you have the gall to break this law. Antigone replies, of course I did. It wasn't Zeus, not in the least, who made this proclamation, not to me, nor did the justice dwelling with the gods beneath the earth ordain such laws for men, nor did I think your edict had such force that you, a mere mortal, could override the gods. Gods, the great unwritten, unshakable traditions, they are alive not just today or yesterday, they live forever from the first time, and no one knows when they first saw the light. Okay, so this is the essence of the entire story. Okay, that laws made by humans cannot supersede the laws given by the god. Okay, whatever the god it is. Okay, so there are higher laws, and laws made by mere mortals, if they are not in accordance with those higher laws, ought not to be followed. So basically what we discussed, lex injusta non est lex, you see that here. Okay, and that's the reason, justified reason for civil disobedience on the part of Antigone. Okay, so are you guys with me? I know I'm not very good at telling stories, but I tried my best. So are you guys following me with the story so far? Understandable. So go back and have a look at this. It's available on Google. Even dramatized depiction of story is available. But apart from the story, the central message which is conveyed here is also very important. Okay, that there is a higher law. Okay, now Greeks believed in the existence of a higher natural law. So it is with these Greeks that this idea of higher natural laws, at least the way we know, had started. Okay, now this is very important. Okay, the idea of higher natural law is important. Think of humans living in like small groups, families. Okay, the idea of nation state, or for that matter, forget about nation, city state had also not emerged long before like the Greek city state started. They must have been governed by what is mutually understood, so customs, conventions, etc. Okay, but as they start living in city, you have now, if there are disputes, you cannot just sort them internally based on customary practices, conventions, because you may not agree on what those customary practices and conventions are, because there are many people living together now. So it's very likely that conflicts will be more. Okay, now it is necessary that there is a set of law which is not one of those customary or conventional laws which could vary from people to people, group to group. Okay, so you need a set of law that makes it possible for all to coexist. Okay, my understanding is that that necessity led to the emergence of a higher law, because all other laws can be subject of corruption, but if there is a law that is higher, that is given by the gods themselves, okay, then that is something that cannot be opposed by anyone, and it has to be followed by everyone. Okay, so that's according to me is the origin of this idea of natural law. Okay, now for the Greeks, okay, for them this is a higher natural law that no human laws, okay, or human actions can go against. Okay, so that's the idea of natural law for them, a higher law that will be binding on all, and it will not vary based on you and I thinking differently. It is not subjective, it's objective, it's universal truth. Okay, so that's the origin of natural law in Greek philosophy. And natural law is not, of course, not immoral. Okay, it's moral in content. Okay, so it's not value neutral. It has value. So it is just law. Natural law is just law. Okay, and a just law is that which is in harmony with universal laws of nature. Okay, so as I told you guys earlier that Greek thinkers derived this idea of natural law from the nature itself. Okay, so where do you derive it from? They say that there is a cosmic order, okay, in the universe, okay, and from that cosmic order, from that harmony that is out there in the nature, you can derive uh, natural law, which is a just law, and this is definitely above that of human laws. Okay, so that's essentially the idea of natural law. Now, if you read from the readings, there is a quote given here, okay, from Aristotle. Okay, um, it says there are two sorts of political justice. Okay, there are two sorts of political justice, one natural and the other legal. Okay, so there are two sorts of political justice, one is natural and the other one legal. The natural is that which has the same validity everywhere and does not depend upon acceptance. The legal is that which in the first place can take one form or another indifferently, but which once laid down is decisive. So it gives you example now that a ransom for a prisoner of war shall be 1 mina, or that a goat shall be sacrificed, not two sheep. Okay, so essentially what he is talking about is that there are two different kinds of justice. Okay, one is natural justice, okay, and the other one is legal justice. Okay, natural justice is that which is based on natural law, and natural law is universal everywhere, and it doesn't depend on us thinking differently or us disagreeing. They are the same everywhere, no matter where you are. So that justice is universal everywhere. Okay, and there is legal justice that is local in its nature. Okay, so that can vary from place to place. Okay, it's indifferent in nature, indifferent in the sense of like value he is talking about. Okay, so as I told you, the traffic, the which side of the road you drive, okay, will be different here than in other countries. Okay, so for example, what measurement unit that you use? For example, we use kg, and in the US they use pound and all that. Okay, so here he gives you example of what that the ransom for prisoner of war shall be 1 mina and all that. Okay, so all those things will be different from legal systems to legal systems in modern context. So for him, it will be from place to place. Okay, so that's essentially the idea of legal justice for him. Okay, so that will vary from place to place. So that's your legal justice. But the natural justice, okay, which is nothing but application of natural law, will be universal everywhere. Okay, so that's the Greek understanding of natural law. Okay, so further says that man-made laws may differ from state to state, but natural law is the same everywhere. Okay, so what are man-made laws? I mean, where can they come from? So I told you that man-made laws can come either from some accepted practices, so conventions, customs. Okay, or it could also be legislated. So a ruler of a particular place might legislate something. Okay, so those are the man-made laws. Okay, so those man-made laws could vary, whether they are from customs or from legislation. They can vary from place to place, but the others, okay, that is the natural law, will not vary from place to place. Okay, so natural law is like it's an unquestioned belief in higher law. Okay, you cannot question the validity of this higher law, because it doesn't come from the subjective will of you and I, as Antigone talks about. Okay, so far, are you guys following me? I will tell you, like, okay, I have a question. Does this mean that legal justice can violate natural justice? So very interesting question. What does I will answer this question in terms of this. Okay, so your question may be this. So according to, for example, Aristotle, does he think that legal justice can violate natural justice? This is a very difficult question to answer from the Greek perspective. Why is that the case? Because quite often, so all these Greek philosophers that you know of, okay, start with Socrates, okay, and then you have Plato, and then Aristotle. Even though they were critical of the those laws of the city estates, okay, Athenian laws, okay, but they still had the highest regard for them. And quite often they will say that there is no justification for violating the state laws. Okay, so what are state laws? Which kind of laws, state laws, I mean, are they referring to? Okay, are are they considering the laws, for example, the Athenian laws, as natural law, or are they considering them as man-made laws? So this is a pretty difficult question to answer. But the thing is that, let me tell you this with a reasonable certainty, that Aristotle will not be happy with what Antigone did. That's the funny thing. Why? Aristotle says that we have a responsibility that we follow the state law, and he had this belief that all the state law, okay, the city laws, okay, were in accordance with the natural law. Okay, so nowhere does he say that, okay, if laws are unjust, okay, that nowhere does he say that, okay, Athenian, those Greek laws were unjust, hence you do not follow that. Okay, at least we do not find such assertion there. But then one tragic incident that happens. Okay, so Socrates was critical of democracy, as you know. Huh? They said that democracy quite often leads to demagoguery. Okay, it is derived from the same word. Okay, as of now we understand it differently, but for them it was different. Because why? Their understanding was that in democracy, the people who, even Plato was not okay with, you guys know that he was also not happy with democracy and also oligarchy. The reason was that they thought that these are people who have no knowledge of what is good, what is bad. Okay, so they do not have all these virtues, and they are the ones who are to rule. So Socrates was very critical of Athenian democracy. Now, if you guys know that Socrates was ultimately tried and sentenced to death. Okay, that means he was to drink that poison made from hemlock and die. So when Socrates had the option of fleeing from Athens, okay, and so that he doesn't die, okay, and it was very much within his capacity. Even his friends tried to convince him into doing so. He said that I will not do that. Why did he say so? Because he said that if I leave this place, okay, under whose laws I have lived my entire life, it has given me all the protection and all that. Now, yes, I'll come to Disha, your question as well. Now, if I leave this law, so I'm basically betraying the law, in the sense that it is the same law that has given those protections to me. Now that it has gone against me, I'm supposed to disobey. I will not do that. So Socrates had so much fidelity. So when the matter was ultimately tried, okay, so it was tried in by a huge jury, okay, and the disagreement was very minor. I think 52% agreed in favor of his conviction and 48% against. Okay, so because of that, he was ultimately punished. So he chose to be bound by the law, even when it was the matter of his life and death. So he drank poison made from hemlock, and then he died. Okay, so this was the kind of fidelity that this Socrates had. And Plato was also more or less the same. Okay, even though he criticized certain corrupt laws here and there, he was never critical of the entirety of laws of the Greek city states. Okay, he had all this idea of how to make better laws. Okay, he was talking about who should rule, that philosopher king should rule, or at least a king who's guided by philosophers should rule. But they always had the utmost respect for the laws of the city states. Okay, the same goes for Aristotle. Okay, so thing is that here's the problem. Okay, so even when they were saying that there is a higher law, natural law, that's mm, you know that's higher in importance than any other law, even so they essentially equated the Athenian city state laws with that of those higher law. Okay, now, and they do not make it quite clear as to what to do when a law seems to be not in accordance with those higher principles. They do not say much, but they clearly say that yes, uh, higher laws are above man-made law. Okay, but if you study Antigone, then you see that there is this understanding that man-made arbitrary laws will not be followed. So yes. Legal justice there did violate natural justice in that story. But mostly, all these thinkers were all full of praise for the Athenian city-state laws. So, Harshamrit, was I able to answer that question? But if you're asking my view, I will give that view later on. Okay, is that fine? Okay, so I have another question. Aristotle didn't practice what he preached. Yes, yes, that's also true. We'll come to that. They talk about all these universal, laws, no? So which are of the same validity and importance everywhere. But as you know, Aristotle is also someone who justified slavery. So anyone who's a prisoner of warfare could be, are not treated as citizens. So all those higher laws that they talk about, okay, and the benefits, protections that come associated with those higher laws were restricted only to the citizens of those city-states. If you are a prisoner of war, if you are a slave, then you do not have those same rights. And then they had a very patriarchal society, and in those society, it was usually the patriarch who has most of the rights. Okay, so women were not considered the same as that of men. Aristotle didn't have good things to say about women, unlike Plato, who considered men and women to be equal. And Plato is also considered as the first communist. Okay, one of the early communists. Okay, so yes, you see this, but then see, we know, you take up almost any philosopher. If you, for example, Immanuel Kant, you study him, then he also believed in racial differences. Okay, he also believed in racial superiority. So what we choose to do, as academicians, that we take the good part, okay, and celebrate that. Celebrate in the sense that we see, human endeavor has been historically that we try and learn about things incrementally. No one comes comes to the Immanuel Kant. Immanuel Kant. It starts with I. Okay, I am M. So I'll come to that later on. I just said, okay, so Immanuel Kant is considered as one of those, recent, moral objectivists. Okay, and we have high regard for his, idea of categorical imperative. But even he personally turned out to be a kind of, believer of racial, superiority. So that's why I gave you this example that, take any philosopher, you will find some flaw or the other. Okay, you will find some flaw or the other. So we know that Aristotle didn't practice what he preached, so that only tells us that our understanding of the universal is quite often corrupted by our particular experiences. So it's very difficult to think about universal ideas in the absence of certain other experiences that we undergo. So his understanding, his experience of his time was such that they never considered slaves as equal to that of other humans of the city states. So yes, that's essentially what but then let's not discredit the good part that he had said. Okay, the good works that they had done, those are very important for us. Okay, so that's what the understanding of natural law is to the the Greek thinkers. Now, where do they come to this idea, this conclusion of universality of natural law from? Okay, so for us to understand that, we have to look at the particular way of thinking of the Greeks. Okay, they had a particular way of thinking. Okay, so and that's that's known as teleology, as I told you the other day. Okay, that's teleological approach to thinking, to knowing. Okay, so what is that? uh, Teleologically, and teleological approach is basically based on this idea that there is a purpose behind everything. Okay, so for example, this remote, okay, so this remote has a purpose, okay, to turn on the AC, okay, or something, whatever other functions. This mobile phone has a purpose, okay, to make calls, and today maybe to chat, to watch a video, whatever. Okay, so take anything for that matter, everything has a purpose. Okay, so funny examples like mm, why do fire go up? Okay, so it's in the nature of the fire to go up because you see a huge fireball up there. Okay, during day. Mm, and then you see that water falls, or things fall. Apple falls to the ground. Why? Because purpose of apple is to be eaten, and who will eat an apple up there? Those who eat apples are down there on the ground, so apple has to fall. So that could be your explanation for gravity. So, so and then you had other examples. There could be many other examples of teleological thinking. So, for example, a coconut grows out of a coconut tree grows out of a coconut. Okay, an oak tree grows out of an acorn. Okay, so there must be some innate nature of this coconut or that acorn. So I'd say that everyone functions based on that innate nature. Okay, so do you guys understand what how they were trying to understand the physical world around them, and then how they were trying to come to this other conclusion? So far, are you guys following me? Am I able to make sense what teleology is essentially all about? Okay, so understand this. Okay, even today we are not able to give up this idea. Okay, we still believe it. Even though we find certain things, okay, certain examples that I gave you, you might find that quite silly. That okay, that why does fire go up? Because it's in the nature of fire to go up, or because there's a higher firewall up there, or that rain falls because those who drink water are here on the ground, or that apple falls to the ground. Just silly examples because those who eat them are there on the ground, and that sort of silly explanation of the world was given by them. Okay, and this particular approach is known as teleology. Why? Because they thought that things, matter had a specific purpose. So take anything will have a specific purpose, and this whole world around you is not an accidental chaos. Okay, it's not an accidental chaos. It cannot be without purpose. There must be a grand design. Okay, there must be a higher plan. Okay, and if your way of thinking is like that, then you are teleological in your approach. So Greeks way of understanding the world was like that. Okay, so they didn't believe that the world came into existence as a matter of accident. Okay, it was not accidentally there. It must have been created, it must have been there. Okay, it must have a purpose. So if it has a purpose, the purpose must have been given by someone. Okay, so that's the teleology. Okay, so I hope you guys understood. So in this book that I just gave you, okay, that I shared with you, you might see many examples. Okay, so one example here given is that rain does not fall so that farmers can grow crops. Okay, no. So sorry. Here before that, they were trying to explain the other approach. Okay, so I just gave you the teleological approach. Okay, so you understand that teleological approach is purposive. So I have a question. Okay, what is that? So can we say that even though Greek philosophers advocated ideas of natural law, but they followed the school of legal positivism in real life? Oh, hold it. I will come to that later on. I tried to explain a little while ago. It's the same question, but I will answer this again later on. Hold it for now. let me make this distinction between these two different ways of thinking. Okay, so on the one hand you have teleological way of thinking that is based on, that is purposive, that is based on this idea that there is a higher design or plan. On the other hand you have a naturalistic thinking. Okay, now when I say naturalistic, it's not in the sense of natural law, no, make that distinction. When I say naturalistic, it's more like that modern scientific way of thinking. Okay, so the modern scientific way of thinking is based on this idea that there is no higher purpose, nothing has purpose. Okay, there is no question of higher plan, is just accident. Okay, the fact that universe exists is a matter of accident. Okay, that big bang happened and then voila, you have everything out there. Okay, so and then what happens now and will happen in the future, the past, present, future, okay, as we know, is all determined by that first event, that is the big bang. So it was like when you strike the the in a carom board. Okay, when you strike those what do you call that, whatever okay, you call that with the striker, and how they disperse on that board. Okay, how they disperse on that board depends on that first strike. Okay, but then you will say that okay, there was someone who you know gave that initial first strike. Okay, so that was me. Okay, who might have struck the striker. So maybe that's God. Okay, so but then the scientific way of thinking says that you do not need that that first striker as well. That is also a matter of sheer accident as only. Okay, now there are many other justification for why they say what they say. We'll come to that later on when we talk about Thomas Aquinas. But essentially the naturalistic idea is that everything else is accidental. Okay, it could have gone this way, it could have gone that way. There is no purpose. The fact that you are there today is not because there was a purpose that for which you exist. No, you merely exist. There could have been a million others who do not exist, but you exist. Okay, so that's a naturalistic way of thinking. Okay, so this is how we make this distinction between teleological thinking, which is purposive in nature, and on the other hand you have this naturalistic approach that says there is no purpose. Okay, so Greeks were teleological in their nature. Okay, so teleological view says that there is purpose, design, plan, whereas the other view, the naturalistic view, says that there is no design, no plan, no purpose. Everything take their own uncharted course. Okay, it's all random. Okay, so certain examples are given that it is true that nature obeys certain universal laws, but those laws do not exist for a purpose. So what do they say? That yes, if I leave it, it falls. So you have laws of gravity, you have many other laws, okay, which are out there, but they do not exist for a purpose. They exist by sheer accident. Okay, maybe in another universe the laws will be different. So it's a case of sheer accident that these laws exist the way they do. Okay, so that's the naturalistic way of thinking. So certain examples given here are that rain does not fall so that farmers can grow. Okay, farmers learn to grow crops where there was rainfall. Okay, so see the distinction. Teleologists would say that rain falls because someone needs to drink or the farmers need to cultivate, but the naturalistic thinkers would say that no, rain falls because rain falls, cultivation is possible. You go to in a desert and there rain doesn't fall, so you cannot cultivate. So I hope you guys understood the difference in these two different ways of thinking. Okay, other examples have been given. Okay, so the leopard does not have spots so that it can be successful predator. The leopard is a successful predator because of the advantage of having spots. Okay, so maybe there were other animals, okay, like leopards, but leopard is the one that succeeded now. So maybe it's because of the hiding capacity that it has due to its spots. So those spots are not an outcome of grand design. Okay, those spots are not an outcome of grand design. It's so see, Darwin becomes important here. Okay, his theory of evolution, natural selection. Okay, That's the scientific way, naturalistic way of thinking. Okay, that's the different way of thinking. Okay, unlike the teleological way of thinking. Okay, so for example, if you go to the sea, most of the creatures there, their body is like very streamlined, and because of that, they are able to swim through the water very fast. Okay, whereas it takes a lot of effort for us to swim. Okay, uh, so one might say that okay, the fish or other creatures there in the sea, they have been designed so that they are good swimmers. Okay, the other approach to that will be that okay, because that particular you know you know structure or design, I'm using design not in the sense that someone has created it, but merely in terms of how they appear. So from naturalistic perspective, one would say that because that's the model, that's the design which is successful in the nature, that's why you see that. There might be others that never succeeded, and they don't exist. So what is being said here is that on the one hand you have a silly understanding that you give purpose to anything. Okay, on the other hand you have a causal explanation of why something is something based on naturalistic reasoning. Okay, so this is the distinction between the teleological approach on the one hand and the naturalistic approach on the other. I think I have overshot the time limit. Okay, so if you guys have any questions, you guys can drop now quickly. We'll continue in the next class. So kindly read from the book that I suggested. Any confusion so far? Vital, yes, tell me. Okay. So kindly go back and read. Okay, you have to understand what approach that they take to be able to know, to be able to understand how they come to the conclusion of natural law. So I will end the recording then.